She thought she was just helping a homeless man. Her manager thought she was making a mistake. But when she lost her job for an act of kindness, she never expected the man she helped would be the one to change her life forever. The rain poured outside as Olivia wiped down the last table of the night. The diner was almost empty, except for a few late-night customers and her impatient manager, Rick, who was counting down the minutes until closing. Then the door swung open. A man stepped inside, dripping wet, his clothes torn and worn out. A homeless man. The other customers stared. Some wrinkled their noses. Others looked away, pretending not to see him. Olivia, however, saw a man who looked cold and hungry. She watched as he hesitated near the entrance, his eyes scanning the room like he expected someone to kick him out. Rick groaned. "Great, just what we need." He turned to Olivia. "Get rid of him. We don't need trouble." Olivia's stomach twisted. Get rid of him? Instead, she did something else. She walked up to the man, her voice soft. "Sir, would you like something warm to eat?" The man blinked, surprised. I don't have any money." Olivia smiled. "That's okay. I'll cover it." His eyes filled with something Olivia didn't expect. Humility, gratitude, disbelief. She guided him to a booth and brought him a hot bowl of soup and fresh bread. As he ate, she noticed the way his hands trembled, like he hadn't had a real meal in days. But before he could finish, Rick stormed over. "Olivia," he snapped, "what the hell do you think you're doing?" She straightened, "Feeding someone who needs it." Rick scoffed, "With whose money?" Olivia hesitated. "Mine." Rick crossed his arms. "We don't serve people like him. He's bad for business." Olivia felt anger rise in her chest. "He's a human being." Rick's expression hardened. "Then you can go be kind somewhere else." Silence. Olivia's breath hitched. "You're firing me?" Rick smirked. "Turn in your apron." She felt the entire diner watching. Customers whispered, but no one stood up for her. The homeless man set his spoon down slowly, his eyes narrowing, but he said nothing. Olivia's hands trembled as she untied her apron and placed it on the counter. She had lost her job for doing the right thing. Without another word, she grabbed her bag and walked out. The homeless man watched her leave. His gaze was unreadable. But what Olivia didn't know, the man she had just helped wasn't homeless at all. And the next time she saw him, he wouldn't be asking for food. He'd be offering her something that would change her life forever. The cold air stung Olivia's skin as she stepped out of the diner, her breath shaky. She had just lost her job. For what? For feeding a man who needed help. Her stomach twisted with frustration. Was kindness really a crime? She pulled her coat tighter around herself and started walking home, trying not to think about how she would pay rent this month. Inside the diner, the so-called homeless man sat quietly, his fingers still wrapped around the warm soup bowl. But his gaze was fixed on the door Olivia had just walked out of. Rick stood nearby, shaking his head. "Sorry about that, pal. Some people don't understand how business works." The man slowly turned his attention to Rick. His sharp blue eyes, now much more alert than before, sent a chill down the manager's spine. Then he smirked. "You're right," the man said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Some people don't understand how business works." Rick blinked. Something about the man's tone felt off. "Anyway, enjoy the meal," he said quickly. "But next time, make sure you—" The man stood up. And for the first time, Rick noticed something strange. The man may have been wearing ragged clothes, but his posture was too confident, his presence too commanding. He didn't move like a desperate man. He moved like someone used to power. Then the man reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black credit card. Rick's mouth fell open. "That's a Centurion card," the man finished for him. "Yes, one of the rarest in the world." He set it on the table and smiled. "The kind only billionaires have." Rick felt the color drain from his face. Billionaire? The man slowly unzipped his jacket, revealing a crisp designer suit underneath. Then he extended his hand. "Allow me to introduce myself," he said coolly. "My name is Daniel Kingston, and I own this entire restaurant chain." Rick staggered back. Well, Daniel's smirk didn't waver. I like to check in on my businesses personally. See how my employees treat people when they think no one's watching. Rick swallowed hard. Sir, I didn't know. Daniel's smirk vanished. His next words were ice cold. And now you never will. Rick barely had time to process the meaning of those words before Daniel turned toward the other staff. You, he said, nodding toward a waitress, do me a favor and get this man out of my restaurant. The waitress hesitated. Sir? Daniel's voice was calm but firm. Fire him, right now. Rick gasped. Wait, no! Please, Mr. Kingston. You fired the wrong person tonight, Rick, Daniel interrupted smoothly, and that was your last mistake. Security guards had already appeared near the entrance. Rick tried to argue, but within seconds he was thrown out onto the street, just like he had done to Olivia. Daniel adjusted his cuffs, then pulled out his phone. Now, he muttered to himself, let's find Olivia, because she had no idea what was coming next. Olivia sat on the edge of her tiny bed, staring at the stack of unpaid bills on her nightstand. Rent was due in a week. She had worked at the diner for years, putting up with long hours, rude customers, and a terrible manager, and now she had nothing. All because she had helped someone. She exhaled sharply and rubbed her temples. She needed a plan. Maybe she could find another job at a different diner. Maybe... Knock, knock. Her thoughts screeched to a halt. Olivia frowned. Who would be visiting her this late? Cautiously, she walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. Her stomach dropped. A sleek black limousine was parked outside her building, and standing at her door, dressed in an expensive suit, was the homeless man from the diner. Olivia's breath caught. What was happening? With shaky hands, she unlocked the door and pulled it open. The man smiled. Good evening, Olivia. Her throat was dry. What are you doing here? The man extended his hand. Let's try this again. My name is Daniel Kingston. His voice was smooth, confident. Too confident for someone she had just given free soup to. She hesitated before shaking his hand. You're not homeless, are you? His lips twitched. No, but I was hungry. She folded her arms, trying to steady herself. Who are you? Really? Daniel took a deep breath. I own Kingston Restaurants, the chain that includes the diner you used to work at. Olivia froze. No way. Her eyes widened. You own the diner? He nodded, and about 100 others. She staggered back. This had to be a joke. The man she had defended, the man her manager humiliated, was actually a billionaire? She shook her head. If you're rich, why did you come in looking like that? Daniel smirked. Because people treat you differently when they think you have nothing. I like to see my businesses from the ground level. His smirk faded and his voice turned serious. And tonight, I saw something I didn't like. Olivia's heart pounded. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. She stared at it. What's that? He handed it to her. Your job offer. She blinked. My what? Daniel smiled. You lost your job for doing the right thing. I can't let that go unrewarded. Her hands shook as she read the paper. The salary was triple what she had made at the diner. Her breath hitched. This is a managerial position, Daniel finished for her, at one of my high-end restaurants. Olivia almost dropped the paper. This had to be a dream. She had gone from jobless to being offered a career by a billionaire in less than a day. Her eyes flickered to his. Why me? Daniel's expression softened. Because in a world where people only care about themselves, you cared about someone else. I need people like that in my company. Olivia's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. She had been fired for helping someone, and now helping someone had changed her life. She looked up at him, her next words changing everything. When do I start? Daniel grinned. Right now. As she stepped into the limousine, her heart pounded with one thought. Her life would never be the same again.